DayZ is a difficult game. This video is for those who are serious about survival and staying alive for any reasonable amount of time. By employing these 6 concepts, I believe you can start to explore the true potential and experience that this game has to offer. I find that DayZ is a lot more rewarding when having a character survive for a few weeks or months at a time, rather than just a few hours or a day. Surviving for that long doesn't mean you have to hide out in the woods or a shed and take no risks whatsoever. I can see how that would get boring pretty quickly. Rather, taking a series of calculated risks to give yourself the best possible chance of coming out of a high-risk military area or a firefight alive. I'm not going to cover the basics here like finding food, weapons, or gearing up in general, or the weather, darkness, or how to shoot. I may come back to these basics in a future video. In this video, I'm going to cover my 6 core rules for long-term survival in DayZ. 1. Loot carefully. Sound cues are really important in DayZ. Make sure you keep as quiet as possible while looting, and even more so in military areas. A loud footstep or setting off a zombie will quickly give you away to any players hiding in the shadows, whereas keeping quiet may give you the upper hand if you hear an enemy before he hears you. And as for the zombies, they've recently become a bit more tricky to deal with. I find it's much easier to crouch walk around them, but if you must kill one, make sure it's a quick melee attack to the head, or you'll end up alerting all of the zombies in the area, and this can quickly get out of hand. Remember that they can also be lured away with VoIP or throwing objects in the opposite direction. As you'll see from the footage, I tried to keep the most appropriate weapon out when looting. At the moment, I have a Mosing and a Glock, so when I'm checking the tents and in close quarters, I want to keep out the most effective weapon ready for that range. When I'm in the trees looking over at longer ranges, I'll have the Mosing ready, and when killing zombies, I'll only take out the axe right before killing it, making sure to quickly switch back to a gun. When looting these high-risk areas, it's only a matter of time before someone else turns up. So don't outstay your welcome. Be as efficient as possible when searching for loot. You don't have time to be sitting in the barracks changing your trousers 15 times. You'll generally get an uneasy feeling in your gut when you've been in a dangerous area for a bit too long. That's when it's time to move on. Number 2. Be a ghost. When moving around the map, you want to stay out of view from other players as much as possible. First of all, avoid high traffic routes, for example the Northern Highway or any common loot routes that you may have seen online. These areas will always have a high enemy presence. Someone will usually be hiding somewhere along the way waiting for you, and getting into a gunfight in any of those big open areas or main roads can get very messy. Further to this, try to avoid running through the middle of towns or straight through the centre of a military base, as that's a really easy way to get yourself spotted and killed. Try to move in a way where you can spot any potential threats before you enter an area, or you end up having a really bad time if you are spotted first. It's also a good idea to avoid running through big open fields at all costs. It's a really easy way to get spotted, pursued and killed as soon as you stop in a safe place to eat your beans. Of course, this can be situational. At some point you may need to go through a field as you have no other option. This also applies to most of the roads on the map. It's possibly even more dangerous than running through fields. If you feel like you need to follow a road to get around a map, stick to the nearby forest whilst keeping track of said road, and you'll be much harder to spot. Generally, the small dirt roads with forest either side are pretty safe, and the same goes for tourist trails. Just make sure you're keeping track of how close you are to the high traffic areas. The way I prefer to do it is to get a compass and plan the safest route prior to travelling anywhere, and I'll make use of any defilade, valleys and terrain that may help keep me out of sight along the way, making sure that I'm constantly scanning 360 degrees around my position. Number 3. Be aware. Following on from the last rule, make sure you're always aware of your surroundings. Make use of the Alt key and zoom feature when travelling. Once you're used to doing this, it will become second nature and will greatly increase your chances of spotting potential threats. However, you must not forget to be aware of what's in front of you. It is very easy to get so focused on checking your 6 that you forget to check the most important spot, and that is the direction that you're actually running. I've had a few scary surprises where I've run straight into someone without even noticing. Another nice habit to get into is looking out of windows when looting buildings, especially 2-story houses. When you're running around looting houses, you're pretty much blind to any players in the immediate area. So I like to peek out of a few windows in the house for a second just to check the area and however far into the town I can see. This works best in taller buildings, but I like to do it at least for one window in pretty much every single house I go into. It's all about reducing surprises. Most of the time in this game you'll end up dying because you just weren't ready. Number 4. Travel light. A lot of players make the mistake of carrying around as many unnecessary items as they possibly can. Keeping organised and keeping your stamina high are very important for me. Sooner or later you will need to hold your breath for a sniper shot or run away from a squad, and you will regret carrying around 5 guns that you don't have any ammo for and 6,000 5.56 rounds that you'll never shoot. I generally try to avoid carrying 2 primary rifles. Most of the time all it does is weigh you down, and then if you need to carry a gun for a friend or you're looting and find something that you need to carry, you won't have the room. I would recommend taking a look at your inventory and making some room, because you really don't want to be sorting out your loot in the middle of a military base or spending way too long looting a body because you need to make room for everything. Another thing to consider is getting rid of your backpack, especially once you have higher tier loot. The main reason being weight. Once you have some armour, you will start to feel really heavy. The higher end clothes have plenty of slots for all the gear you need. Again, if you're keeping organised, you'll see that you have no use for all that space. The other advantage of this is it gives your character a much slimmer profile, which could make you harder to spot. 5. Approach dangerous areas carefully. The military zones are the most dangerous areas on the map. The way you approach these areas is a key factor in whether you come out alive or not. The first thing you want to consider before you go in is an escape plan. Plan your route in and out, and always have somewhere to run if you get caught off guard. This saves you a lot of time and means you can focus on other things while you're inside. I always try to overwatch the wider area before I move any closer. This will give you a good idea of whether there is anyone looting the area. Large groups should be easy to spot while doing this. However, you won't always be able to tell if there's anybody there. People could be staying out of sight or camping in buildings. I'll usually just do this for around 5 to 10 minutes and from more than one spot if possible. Just note that you don't want to pick any obvious or open sniper spots that enemies would be watching. Once you are satisfied that the area looks safe, you can begin your approach. Start by walking around the outside of the area while scanning around the trees and bushes and slowly move towards it. I like to carefully clear the tree lines and sniper spots as I approach. If there are any buildings looking over that area, make sure to clear these for campers before going any further. A good example being the large camo buildings often found in military bases. And then once you've cleared the immediate area around the base, you can confidently move in. Try to keep in cover whilst doing this and make sure to keep your guard up, because you can't guarantee that there won't be any surprises. And always remember that there could be someone coming in behind you. So keep checking as much as the outside area as you can whilst you're inside the base. 6. Keep the initiative against other players. For an experienced player, the greatest threat in the game is other players. You can often go for hours without seeing one, but it's important not to get too excited when you do see someone. When you encounter another player, the first thing you want to consider is, do you have the advantage? Whether you're looking to kill them or whether you want to have a friendly interaction, the same concept applies. If you have the advantage, you should work to keep it that way throughout the entire interaction. For example, not taking a shot until you're 100% sure it will down them. An example on the friendly side of things is keeping your weapon out and making sure theirs is put away. That simple act will greatly increase your chances of survival. Things get more interesting when you have the disadvantage. If you get shot at and you know where the enemy is positioned, You should try to work to gain the advantage as quickly as possible. Take the high ground, break the line of sight, and try to put yourself in a better position. Evaluate the situation as quickly as possible. Are you outnumbered? Outgunned? If you think you're not going to survive, there's no point fighting. If you find yourself in this situation, do everything in your power to escape and live. Similarly, if you're on your own and spot a group of players that have guns, avoid them at all costs. Stay hidden. If you have any doubt, it is easier to retreat and leave it alone. It's better to survive. Another situation could be that you get shot at and you're not able to quickly pinpoint the enemy's location. Here, the best approach is to flee in the opposite direction, making use of any cover you can find. It's very unlikely that you'll survive if you stay and try to fight an enemy that you can't actually see. If this happens to me, I'll sometimes try to do a large loop, maybe 1 kilometer or so, to try and get behind where I think the shot came from. And if you can spot them that way, you now have something to work with. I find that working in a small group of your own is very helpful, if you can. A 2 or 3 man squad can be very effective. With all this in mind, remember the golden rule of DayZ. There is always another player. Never get too comfortable, even if you think you have eliminated all the threats. There could be another person in the group running your way, or any maniac just looking for a fight will hear those shots. I may cover the topic of dealing with other players, gunfights, and looting bodies in more depth in a future video. I hope that you'll be able to take something away from this video, even if it's just 1 or 2 things you remember that help you survive. Please bear in mind that I'm not telling you how to play the game, I'm just telling you how I play, and what I think about while surviving. You can play however you want, which is part of the appeal of DayZ. Sometimes I'll run around Electro with a Makarov just for a laugh, but I find it so rewarding to walk out alive of bad situations, and I find that the more seriously I play, the longer I survive, the more I look forward to playing the next day. I hope that those who are looking to take the game very seriously and survive for a long time can find something useful within this video. Remember, even with all these rules in mind, the game is very unpredictable. You simply cannot account for everything. That's what makes it so interesting. This game keeps you on your toes. You can't eliminate all the risks, and you have to make tough decisions.